What is that mysterious flame within us that refuses to die? What is that silent pull that draws us inward even when the world dazzles us with 1,000 distractions? What is this strange longing we feel? A longing not for wealth, not for pleasure, not for success, but for something we cannot name, something ancient, something utterly intimate. And what is this simplicity at the heart of truth? A simplicity so obvious that we walk past it every day, as though blind to our own self. These were not questions asked in scriptures alone. They rose in the hearts of seekers who sat before Ramana Maharshi, a being whose very presence quieted the storms of the mind. One day, a seeker, perplexed by the idea of enlightenment, finally voiced what many were silently wondering. Maharshi, you became enlightened so easily. How? To many, the question contained hidden comparisons, the seeker's own struggle, the effort, the confusion, the endless spiritual practices contrasted with the young Ramana who, at 16, simply laid down on the floor and realized the self in a single stroke of inner clarity. But Maharshi, in his characteristic way, did not feed the drama of difficulty or ease. He did not glorify his experience, nor did he diminish the sincere struggle of others. Instead, he pointed directly to the heart of the matter. The self is always here. I only turn my attention inward. Why did Maharshi answer like this? Because to him, enlightenment was not an achievement. It was the most natural thing. It was not something he gained. It was something he recognized as already present. His response was an invitation for the seeker to see that difficulty appears only when we imagine we are going somewhere, attaining something, becoming someone. Maharshi had no such story in his mind. When fear of death arose in him, he didn't resist it, didn't argue with it, didn't create a philosophy around it. He simply asked, who is dying? And in that question, the entire illusion collapsed. When he said he became enlightened easily, it was not a claim of personal talent, but a revelation of a deeper truth. When there is no ego interfering, the self is as obvious as sunlight. The ego makes it difficult, wisdom makes it simple. Maharshi often said, because you identify with the body, you think realization is something to gain, but the self is already realized. His enlightenment looked effortless because it was not the person called Venkatraman who awakened. It was the dropping of the very idea that a person existed to be enlightened. Most seekers struggle not because the truth is hidden, but because they are constantly trying to find it as something separate from themselves. Maharshi saw instantly that the one searching was the very thing being searched for. His simplicity came from the absence of inner conflict. He surrendered completely, not in action, not in words, but in being. And in that effortless surrender, the self revealed itself. He used to say, effort is required only to remove the assumption that you are not the self. This is why his path was easy. Not because realization is easy, but because not resisting truth is easy when the ego falls silent. But for most seekers, the ego does not fall silent automatically. It fights, it argues, it doubts, it clings. Maharshi's life shows what happens when, for even one moment, the ego ceases to demand a story. That is why he never described his enlightenment as a miracle. He described it as a simple shift of attention, a shift from the seen to the seer, from the body to the being, from the mind to the silence behind the mind. When the seeker asked him how he awakened so easily, Maharshi was gently pointing out that the real question is not how he awakened, but why we resist awakening. His answer redirects the seeker's gaze. Don't study the event of his realization. Study the presence in which it happened. Don't imitate the outer form of his life. Discover the inner stillness he lived from. Don't envy the ease of his awakening. Inquire into the nature of the one who feels awakening is difficult. Maharshi's ease came from his innocence, his total vulnerability to truth. He did not negotiate with existence. He did not try to improve himself. He simply faced the fear of death with absolute honesty. And in that honesty, the ego dissolved like a shadow exposed to light. He often said, "Be still," not as a technique, not as a command, but as a revelation of your natural state. The stillness that Maharshi embodied is not something to practice endlessly. It is something to recognize. It is already here, underneath the turbulence of thought, underneath the anxiety of becoming someone, underneath the belief that enlightenment is a distant mountain. So when the seeker asked, "How did you become enlightened so easily?" Maharshi's real answer was, "Because I did not look away from myself." And this is the essence of his entire teaching. Enlightenment is not easy or difficult. It is simply what remains when you stop avoiding who you truly are. The seeker left with more than an answer. He left with a mirror. A mirror that reflects a truth Maharshi embodied every moment, that the self is not attained but uncovered, not created but recognized, not achieved but remembered, and that the remembrance becomes easy the moment the mind stops insisting it must be hard. If you listen to Maharshi with your whole being, you may realize that the question was never about him. It was always about you. Are you willing, even for one breath, to stop running from your own self? Because in that single breath, enlightenment becomes as effortless as waking from a dream.